Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Church of True Christ Sunday sermon. We got everybody here this week, so this is going to be good. We're all back together for the first time in a while. And yeah, so of course, let's always start off with our direct from Aramaic, Our Father prayer, just to set the mood and get everything started. So if you guys want to bow your heads. Oh, birther, Father, Mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us, make it useful as the rays of a beacon to show the way. Unite our I can to yours, so we walk as kings and queens with every creature. Create in me divine cooperation from many selves, one voice, one action. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. Forgive our hidden past, the secret shames, as we consistently forgive what others hide. Deceived neither by the outer nor the inner, free us to walk your path with joy. From you is born all ruling will, the power and life to do. The song that beautifies all, from age to age, it renews. Amen. All righty, guys. We have an interesting topic we're going to bring up. We're going to kind of be picking up off of the last time it was just Dyanna and I talking about happiness and finding happiness in life. So we are going to kind of be butting it up with life changes. One of the biggest things that we experience, and we've said this many times here on this channel, is when we begin to walk with Christ, when we live with the foundation of the divine in our lives, our life ultimately changes. We destroy the toxic trauma bond we have with this familiarity of our previous life. And we have understood, and we have come to understand that we have found comfort in this familiarity, stagnancy in this familiarity. And sometimes this familiarity can be comfortable because it has brought you stability in the past. But ultimately, breaking that bond and walking through the challenges and walking through the transmutational fire that Christ has in store for you to bring you to your most joyful, abundant, and happy life is bravery in and of itself. So as we undergo this transformation within ourselves, our whole world begins to change. We begin to see this world differently, and we begin to see the light within it all, the light of Christ that shines through very deeply. So ultimately, having the courage to embrace this and have an understanding of what's happening as we go through these changes in our lives. And sometimes it's overriding our own ego, our own standards that we had before as well. So we know that the ego is the safety mechanism for us. It acts as a safety mechanism. And it can always try to pull you back into your old life because of that familiarity and comfort being a safety mechanism for you. So we are going to talk about embracing this today, finding ways to let go, finding ways to surrender to God and Christ. And I am going to hand it off to Dyanna. Dyanna, let's hear what you have to say about this topic in particularly, and then we'll hop to Dawn. You're mute, your mic.
What I see in the community, which is why I feel like this lesson is needed, and it is of Christ. When, like in the spiritual community, you see a lot of people that know a lot of spiritual things. They know a lot, and that's great. But like, where do they put it into their lives? And I say it forever. I'm even getting like the reputation of telling everyone to quit their job, because most of the time your job is usually not in alignment with your soul. And you can find jobs that are in alignment with your soul. Both you guys have great jobs that align with a soul too, at least now as we push forward. But there's some people that are doing jobs that are like, there's no soul. And that's got to be up to you and your soul, though. Like maybe you could be like the most boring job ever and that be your soul. And that's great. So it's personal. And then when we come into life and like our situations and where we stand and where we live, we have to be willing to look at all of it. Stagnancy there was a great word, because you can feel happy-ish, content, like you can be fine, put it that way. You can be fine. But if you are not spiritually evolving, there is no real such thing as like stagnancy in the way we think of it. When we're sitting in stillness and meditation, actually incredible amounts of energy movement. It's not stagnancy. So when we say stagnancy in life, it's being like stuck, maybe in a routine where it's more or less similar week to week. You're not really plateauing, or you are plateaued, sorry, and you're not really pushing through those plateaus to the next, And maybe you did originally. Maybe for years you were doing really good, but something has hit a wall and you have to look at why. And we are being called now as like really the first strongest wave of this movement. Like the hippies did it, and we can look at what they did good and we can look at what they did bad, and we can look at the ones that stayed hippies. Especially the ones that stayed hippies have lived a life. They have lived an open and free life. They've probably written many books. They're some kind of shaman or spiritual leader. They're probably like the older people we see here on YouTube, even like those people that just didn't let the spirit die. But some people did let the spirit die. And look at the difference. The ones that let the spirit die went into the 9-to-5 work world and did what society said to do. And the ones that let the spirit live are the ones that you look at as hippies and have a free-flowing life. That's not to say that's what yours has to look like, but it has to be free-flowing, because the soul and the spirit are free-flowing. So it means, this is like one of those famous quotes, can't remember who said it, but you have to give up the good for the great. And that's just the way it is. And you might even need to mourn it. Your ego is going to panic over it, but your soul is never going to stop calling you to more. So if you've hit a situation where there's just simply no more, or not enough more, or it's not as fast as you want, or whatever the issues are, where you're just feeling energy, like contention of self in that experience, you need to open that up however you can. If it's scary, whatever it is, if you set your intentions with the divine, make sure it's in the highest alignment with the middle pillar, the Christ space, and the universe will open the doors for you and help you through. But you're going to have to take the scary steps that it gives you for that to become enacted in your life.
I completely agree. Don, what are your thoughts on this?
Everything Dyanna said is right on the head. And like, you and I and Dyanna all know, we have like backroom conversations. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get put on the air. And one of these, well, a couple of these is between like me and Kyla and me and Frank Castle. There is a lot of soul level upgrade going on right now, spiritual shedding of people and lower vibrational things. And even Frank just went through a huge transition that he's dubbed losing the inner bitch. And that's what's happening to a lot of us, is we're shedding the low vibration mindset. We're just done with the low vibe people. The time of trying to gather people, like, yeah, we can still explain to everybody what's going on, but the collecting is done. What we're at now is, what I'm seeing is, we're at that point where we're moving forward. Haley, we're moving forward with that soul level upgrade, that we're all just super focused on where we need to be spiritually and where we need to be creatively for this transition and these changes of life to come in. Because like I've talked to both Frank and Kyla, and they're both like, I feel like everything is changing in me. And it's like, it is. And I honestly feel like a lot of you have heard me talk about on my own show that I'm a walk-in, right? I had a fundamental paradigm shift a couple of years ago, and completely different human. I wouldn't even know me 5 years ago now, right? This is a different variation of my soul consciousness, and it's happening to a lot of us, and it's freaky, but if you're experiencing it, it's where we're supposed to be going and what we're supposed to be doing, because you're just shedding the low vibe bullshit, or as Frank said, losing the inner bitch.
I love it, dude. That's actually a really good way to put it, man, is losing the inner bitch. That's very cut and dry. And of course, that's very Frank Castle style. I love it. So I'm going to pin off kind of what both of you guys were saying. So Dyanna talking about the stagnancy, quitting your job and things like that. Ultimately, what I get from her when I hear that is, we all deserve to have happy, joyful, abundant lives here. We do. And sometimes we're guilty. Even I've been guilty of it. We're guilty of sacrificing our happiness for that comfort, that familiarity and the comfort. You know, you get used to going to the same place every day. You get used to doing the same things every day. You get used to this routine. You get used to the schedule. And giving up the good for the great is something that I even want to touch on as well, because Aiden over there, but giving up the good for the great, because while your old life might have appeared good because of that familiarity, that comfort in that, you know, having that toxic trauma bond with all of this stuff that you've been doing before, it's ultimately when it comes down to what we deserve for ourselves and what we know we deserve. It's knowing we're enough. It's knowing that we deserve the great. It's knowing that sometimes in order to achieve the great, we're going to have to go through some kind of a demolition phase in the process, you know, and ultimately this is, guys, change is the only constant on the spiritual evolution. Just as you heard Don saying, you know, Don isn't the same person he was 5 years ago. I mean, dude, I'm not the same person I was a year ago at this point. You know, when you walk with this foundation of Christ and the divine in your life, and you open yourself up and you surrender to this, ultimately you embrace this change. You know, we've talked about having the unshakable trust in the divine. We talked about having the unshakable trust in the unknown. And ultimately, the one thing I can assure everybody of is God will provide for you. It will, you know, and of course, like I talked about my example last time, I saw it full throttle, how God will provide for me when I give up the good for the great, because God also knows that I deserve the great, because God is within me. And, you know, even just Lee saying he got a second chance, my eyes are opened now and all of that. So absolutely. So that's the thing, guys. And also I'm going to touch on what Don was saying about removing the inner bitch. That's definitely a cut and dry way of putting it. And it is. It's ultimately, in a lot of ways, when we know we deserve better in this world, we have to pull up our big boy pants and our big girl pants. And we have to walk towards that deserving of that better world, that great world that's waiting for us, you know. And this is the transmutation process, guys. This is how it works. You know, we ultimately begin calcination at that point. And as we begin calcination, so I've talked about the 7 stages of spiritual alchemy on my show many times. And calcination is the dissolving of the previous to create for the new. And I know calcination is not an easy process in terms of spiritual alchemy. It's not. But ultimately, you deserve to be happy. You deserve to live a happy life. You deserve to live a life that's in alignment with Christ and the divine. And anything that is going to keep you from that is ultimately trying to hold you back in this experience. So that's where I kind of like, I like that term, removing the inner bitch, because it is like, sometimes we got to pull up our big boy pants or big girl pants, and we got to do it, you know. And I know there's always concern and worries, because sometimes when we start to demolish our own life, of course, there are people involved in that, and we have concern, we have worry, we have care, especially because we care for those people. But the one thing that I can assure everybody here, that is, if this great life you are looking at is in alignment with your soul and your mission here, God will provide. It will. So, Dyanna, what are your thoughts? Mike.
I was gonna say that's exactly it. And then it's just allowing for that process, because what you said about calcification, like, we do get calcified, like, using it probably maybe in a different lens, like, we get calcified, like, that's energy calcifies. That stagnation creates a calcification within the energy system. And when you do any kind of energy work, just simple meditation, you can start to feel into blocks, and you will have deeper hidden blocks. It's why you have to consciously do this wherever you can find it, because you will find even more. It will keep expanding, and things will just open that you didn't even realize were blocks. That's how this work works. And some of you have probably been doing it for years, healing, 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 but still going, but why not yet? What now? Why? You know what I mean? Like that life isn't presenting itself. Because as a part of healing yourself, you also need to make sure you are in alignment with where you are, what you are, where you're going. Like absolutely all your ducks need to be in a row for your aimed intentions to come into play. Like if you're manifesting that you want to go on a cruise, but you're not looking at cruises, saving for a cruise, making sure you have the time off work, making sure you have babysitters, like whatever the things are for said cruise, that's not going to happen. But if you started to get the ball rolling, started to just look into cruises, maybe start to save for such a cruise, all of a sudden you get a half off deal in your inbox for a wonderful cruise. Like that is the way the universe works. It's a silly example, but it just shows like, because when it gets into the nuances of our life and reformulating, moving or relocating, reformulating just how you live, quitting jobs, relationships, all the different scenarios that come into the variables of life, honestly could get so fine-tuned to each and every one of us that you have to just like look into yourself, make these lists. Like I never like, well, I have had to do it many, many times. There's so many different workshops and everything that I've done. And in almost all of them, they have you write stuff down, right? And because it just, there's a part of you, like when you actually write, that's different. It touches the subconscious brain more when you actually hand write something down. Your phone's better than nothing, but handwriting it down will actually just like tap you in, like automatic writing, right? You're going to go into those higher spheres. So if you're not sure what you're blocked about, if you're not sure what needs to change, the first thing you can do is the cliche, make a list. Okay. Things I like in my life, things I don't like about my life. To fix what I don't like about my life, do some of the things I actually like about my life need to change? And there's your hard points, because that is exactly what you'll find. You'll find things that you like about your life that actually need to change. And that's where you find those moments of swapping the good for the great.
Well said. Well said. I really like that. Don, what are your thoughts?
Again, you guys are both right on point. And I just think one of the important things for everybody to remember, because not all of us can jump into this both feet to just hop out of that system, that construct, and moving forward. So one of the things I've personally done is learning to work within the energy of the environment until change is possible. Like you're always trying to pull towards that great, but what I've learned to do is, everybody knows I have a job that absolutely sucks, right? That's the running joke. But even in that environment where most people would be just disgusted and downtrodden, I've figured out the things that I've done to produce a positive energetic response from my coworkers and employer, and it makes my experience in that environment pleasant while I'm there. And it's not as though I'm like being a fake person. I'm simply providing the people that I need to interact with the patterns that stimulate them and give me the positive response that I want, right? It's working within the energies of other people. It's like, okay, I see when I behave this way, my employer acts this much more positively towards me, and my experience, like, it's like there's less resistance to the experience, because I know a lot of us feel like we're dragged through that matrix existence when we have to do it, right? If you can find a way to hit a resonance with the environment around you, you actually seem to pass through it with less resistance. And I think that is a fundamental thing to remember.
I completely agree, man. I'm going to kind of hit off like a couple things you guys said too. So one thing Dyanna brought out too, and you actually just talked about it, Don, we're talking about meeting God halfway, meeting the divine halfway. Even what Dyanna was saying too, like you want to go on a cruise. That's what you want to manifest. You want to go somewhere, have a good vacation, things like that. You actually need to start the energetic ball going, right? Even when it comes to looking at all of the blocks in your life and the changes, even writing the list, like Dyanna said, that's a great idea, because then what it does for you is you begin to be able to look at everything in front of you from an objective third party point of view. It's not running through your head anymore. It's not just something you're thinking about. Now it's on paper. Now it's objective. You can look at it. And ultimately what this does is it kind of helps with the non-attachment aspect of things. It kind of helps you become a little bit more non-attached with what you're experiencing, because when we're talking about these severe life changes, there's a lot of emotions involved. We're humans, we feel, right? And we embrace that feeling, the emotions that we have. It's not letting them completely and totally rule our decisions and how we are that makes or breaks it. So yeah, ultimately meeting God halfway is going to help you. Think of these actions. It's called intentional action, right? I have talked about this before, how my all-time favorite manifestation method is head, heart, and hands. It's tried and true. It always works. You don't have to dress it up. You don't have to do anything fancy. You don't need to fold paper 3, 6, 9 times, throw it into the freaking abyss, and circumambulate the mountain 33 times after you do it, just so you can manifest something. No, head, heart, and hands is the most simple manifestation method. You think about what you want in your head, you align it with your heart, those two are in alignment, and then your hands get to work. Now, it can be physical hands, it can be metaphorical hands, okay, figurative hands, whatever you want to look at it as. But that's how it works. So when you make this alignment within yourself in this life change, and your hands, which are, talk about the energy points in our hands that we have too, very powerful, very strong energy points. And we get to work creating and imprinting the frequency of which we wish to create into our consciousness field. And then that frequency is like a code to the divine. And the divine looks at what you're putting out there, and it's like, okay, that's what he wants. He's showing me what he wants. I want to give it to him, and or her, whoever it might be. And then you will start to notice these shifts and changes start to occur. You can't just sit there and wish something into existence. You can't. And that's kind of even what I was talking about with what Dyanna was saying, the hippie movement and all of that. Like, some of them are like that. They think they can just wish things into existence, but ultimately it's a balance here. Work can be spiritual, especially when you are working towards trading the good for the great. So ultimately, great, amazing. Also being clear as well. Amazing. And even what Don was talking about too, I want to touch on what he was saying about being that light at the workplace. Let's say, because here's the thing, guys, we're here in the human experience. All right. We have to provide for ourselves. We have to make it comfortable, and that sometimes means, we have to take on some interesting occupations to make that work, but it's also the mentality and the mindset that goes behind it. And Don being the light at his company, being the example, being the light, always bringing the happiness to the table, the joy to the table, and it's spreading the contagious happiness to others too. That's definitely an amazing thing when it comes to the life changes as well. Like, let's say you gotta start cleaning bathrooms. That's your job. Well, just go ahead and bring that light to the table in that instance. And ultimately what's going to happen when you do that too is the divine's going to see all the light that you're bringing to what you would call a shit job. And the divine's going to be like, he deserves better. Look at what he's doing. He's already acting like he deserves better. So, and down the line, you will get something better. I promise you that. Also, to being clear, I wanted to touch on that as well. Absolutely. And that is done through intention and intentional action. When you're clear and you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve, the dream that you're looking for, like homestead, or whatever it might be. And you start to work towards that. You become clear and you start to put energy into that. And even just kind of what Dyanna was saying about simple meditation in this aspect as well. One of the things I'll say, and I've always said this even throughout my spiritual evolution, and I know I said it on my show, but praying in mantra is talking to God. Meditation is listening. And in this, even in just simple meditation, you can hear and you can feel the messages that are being conveyed to you by the divine. You know, these sometimes God might be trying to give you and like an energetic map to what you're looking to achieve. You know, sometimes, you know, you might see ways how you can connect point A to point B to trade the good for the great. So yes, ultimately being clear in what we wish to achieve and being clear in the good that we want to trade for the great is going to help us in that endeavor as well. And that's just, you know, that this is tried and true stuff, guys. This isn't no fancy dressed up overhyped new age, like, oh, you stare into the mirror and you say what you want 50 or 33 times and then it'll manifest just out of nowhere. Like, no, guys, like, there's balance here. And that's the other thing too. Like, I'm just going to quell that at this point as well. There's balance. Okay. Well, yes, the spiritual is permanent and we cultivate ourselves spiritually. Absolutely. We do that every day of our lives, and we embody the spiritual principles and impart them into every facet of our existence. We are also here in the physical because we chose to be here. And choosing to be here in this time means that there are certain things that we have to do in order to help get ourselves to trade the good for the great. So ultimately, yeah, no, work can be spiritual. It can, in the aspect of it, if it is getting you from the good to the great. And that's something, you know, I just wanted to impart before I hand it off to Dyanna.
Yes, I like that. And how you say hands, heart, mind, right?
Head, heart, hands.
Yes. We discussed this, and I see that as body, mind, soul, because the body is the action, the mind is the thoughts, but then the soul is the alignment. So the soul comes first and foremost, and you find within that alignment. And then the mind has to have stories and thoughts that match that alignment. And then the body, where we chose to be, needs to act out the mind, which is acting out the alignment of the soul. That is middle pillar alignment in the physical form. That is the Holy Trinity, that is you. So getting these things into the alignment is first and foremost. And I snickered a little, not at anyone that has a job, but like just at the conundrum they might be facing. But when you mention jobs and how some are sillier than others and things like that, there are certain jobs though that I think we know what are in alignment or not. And the job that came to mind is a certain, you know, ring that's the oldest job of time, they say. And it's like, there's certain jobs that I feel like I don't know where that is. That's not my place to think about. Like, I actually have no alignment in that space. I know about the cults of Venus, and that sounded cool, but I don't think that's how it operates today. And that seems like an area where if you work in that field, like that whole thing needs to become purified. And then not to mention all the other job rings that exist in that kind of arena. That is an entire shadow force over this world. That if you want to be, if you are a starseed and want to awaken and be happy, you would get out of that arena. And the same thing could be if you work in Hollywood, depending, or any kind of an industry where they're going, like lawyers and things like that, where they're going to marketing, where they're going to ask you to test, to push your moral alignment, your soul alignment. Like your morals should not come really from society. Well, they can kind of see why they, not really. Honestly, if they taught us the soul first without the dogma, that's all you need. Because do unto others as you would do understand how things work, and they overcomplicated it. But we now, I feel like, especially starseeds, are exceptionally coming online into what aligns for us. And that is the only thing we can hold true to what is our purpose in the new world. And I think it's more than obvious we have a new world. And what I'm seeing and what came through is like this split, and why we're doing this lesson today, this split that we kept hearing about, and people made up very dramatic reasons for it. But the split kept coming through in multiple different channels and prophecies and things like that. And what it is you need to split. You need to split. And this has been coming through for a long time. It's just now, that's just how messages do. And when you start to learn to listen to your intuition and things like that, you'll start to realize your flavor of messaging and how you're spoken to. And the split is us. We split from our old for our new. And then that comes back to the list. Because if you don't know what your new is, which you might not, because that's all coming online. I think for many years, a lot of us have been in the healing. And we might not be done healing because the human might never be done because of aforementioned industries that exist on this earth that we all share a collective consciousness with, by the way. So that affects us all no matter what. If we're all here alive on this earth together, that's affecting us. So we're always going to be healing because of those aspects. But that's no shame, blame, or guilt to us. We just still move forward with alignment. But if you don't know how, where, or what to start with, like, this is where you unpack. This is why I preached astrology, because knowing thyself is first and foremost. And then from there, you split and you become the new earth version of yourself.
Absolutely. So well said. So well said. And Don, what do you think about all of that?
Oh my God, you guys have so much there. Like I'm just gonna work backwards from what I was jotting down as you both were going. Like I absolutely agree with Dyanna, what Dyanna is saying about the split. And I think even to simplify it more, it's the emotional and spiritual evolution that as we go through this is going to be that split. Like we're splitting away from the old versions, the old personas of ourselves as we become more spiritually and emotionally evolved, because we don't need that extra luggage. It's like Lee just said in the chat, it's time to drop our luggage because we don't need that crap anymore because we're just going up. Like it's our turn to spiral up, as they say. And into that, like, this is one thing along my journey I've definitely picked up is the more clarity I have spiritually, mentally, and physically, the more connected to these understandings and the more I feel that my emotional and spiritual frequency is elevating. It's as simple as losing the things that we've been convinced that we need, but we actually don't. And that involves people, family members, habits, jobs, all of it can be detached from. And I'm not saying become completely disconnected. This is a thing that I like to be very clear on, is you're not to become disconnected from this reality, but it's okay to go to that detached observer point to help further your understanding of your own evolution, right? Because when you can pull back to where you're just looking at your own situation, you can help guide yourself through the energetic process that you're embarking on. And I think that's what we need to do, is that detached observer standpoint, at least every once in a while we're going through these transitions.
I completely agree. I think you both kind of like really nailed it. And I'm going to kind of like talk about some things Dyanna said, and then I want to talk about the disconnected thing because there's something really big I have for that one. And ultimately, yes, the split from old to new, and that's ultimately what's going on. We've been hearing about the split for a while, especially in our spiritual community, talking about this timeline split. New Earth is going to split from old Earth, and the ones who choose to live in the foundation of Christ and the divine are going to move into this new Earth frequency. And the ones who want to choose the parasite class system, they want to live in the authoritarian, totalitarian 15-minute cities, are going to continue to move forward with the old Earth paradigm. But one of the biggest things, the symbolism in this to me, is that new Earth's already here. It's already available to you. It's a frequency. It's a state of being. It's a state of consciousness. And ultimately, excuse me, when we walk with the foundation of Christ and the divine in our life, we begin to open ourselves up to that state of being and that state of consciousness. And even kind of pinning on what Dyanna was saying, know thyself, because I always say, know thyself and you will know the divine. And ultimately, when you begin to know yourself and you get to know this new you, embrace it, welcome it. Okay. Guys, I never said change wasn't scary at times. It most certainly can be. And, especially when we are demolitioning, or we are going through a demolition period of our old life, and everything we've come to know and we found comfort in is being destroyed completely around us. But this is where you come into knowing thyself and know the divine, because you know that you will be caught. You know that Christ and the divine have you. You will always have a foundation to land on. So no, exactly. I wanted to touch on that. And then one of the biggest things I want to touch on real quick too is what Don said. Don't become disconnected from reality, right? And here's the thing. When you begin to trade the good for the great, and you begin to work towards that, and the people in your life are going to kind of, we've talked about the Smith effect here before, you know, the Mr. Smith, especially on my show, but I'll kind of give a TLDR on it for those who need a little bit of an update. But the Smith effect is when you begin to improve your life and you begin to improve yourself and you start to trade that good for the great. A lot of the people around you are going to get angry and upset at that. You know, they're because you're showcasing to them something that they feel they cannot achieve and that they cannot do. But little do they all know that they also have the power within themselves to do that as well. And you're going to have people telling you that you're disconnected from reality while you're trading the good for the great. It's just a side effect, excuse me, of what happens there. So one of the kind of the fail safes I'm going to give you to know and kind of keep in check, keep yourself in check to know if you're being disconnected or not, is look at what you want. Look at what's clear in front of you. Get that clear intention for what you want. Now, in ways, start to look at that intention and what it's going to take to get there. If you are ultimately seeing that getting there is going to cause unnecessary, I guess I would say like if you're going to see that getting to that is going to put you in a bad situation of some kind, or it's going to put detriment to your health, or if it's going to put detriment to your mental health and your well-being, then you know you're being disconnected at that point. But if you are looking at these steps and you know that you can positively achieve this with your foundation in Christ and the divine to getting to where you want, you're not disconnected. Here's the thing, guys, when we make these changes in our life for the better, you know, the people around us are going to, again, the Smith effect, you're going to get people who are going to lash out at what you are doing. And this is where the bravery comes in, and understanding that this is a side effect of trading the good for the great. You know, when you trade the good for the great in your life, there are going to be people around you who see you doing that, and it's going to upset them. And they are going to get angry with you and all that. And it's because, like I said in the beginning of this, they see you doing something that they feel that they cannot achieve. But little do they know that they can achieve it. And you doing that around these people, despite kind of any negative feedback you'll get, that is bravery. That is walking with Christ. That is walking with the divine. And that is leading by example. You are showing them what they are also capable of, even though they might think they aren't at the time. But who's to say? You never know. What you do while you trade the good for the great might ultimately ignite a spark in them and make them see that they can also trade the good for the great. Dyanna.
Yes, well put. And I had a point and I forgot it. But that's true. Oh, one thing. So the Agent Smith effect, when their egos are triggered, you actually put that perfectly, because they can latch on to like a demiurgic kind of egregore thing that will straight up stream stuff through, and they'll be like, I don't know why I said that. But also, this effect can just be pure. It can be taken advantage of, but it can be pure from their own self and their own panic. Yes, their ego to a point, because the thing is like, if you're not in alignment with someone or some situation or something like that, they're also not going to be in alignment with you. Like Don was saying earlier about how he talks to his boss specifically to get, like, because he knows how that's going to be, but it's going to be authentic. So you can always do that and then gauge, like at work, yeah, go for it. Make work as happy as possible. But like if you have close friends or family members and you always have to do that with them and you see them all the time, like there's got to be levels where you need to just be authentic. And then you're going to get that ego reaction from them because they don't want to lose what they have with you. They don't want things to change. They're so in their own set ways. They don't have that same blooming that you might be having coming online. Theirs might be coming differently. So you're really going to create, like, you sometimes just have to accept being a catalyst for someone else, and that's hard. But that's just the way it is. And you have to pick and choose when that is, because I really like what Dawn said, because that's so true. You can always find like the most heartfelt, soul-led thing to talk to people, and that can help people change, and that can help everybody around you get better. But at some point, like, you don't want to get lost in that sauce either. We want to be the middle pillar, be the Christ, but also we are an individuated person here on earth. And even the Course in Miracles, which we've been deep diving into, it speaks of how God would never want you not to be happy. He's simply asking that it is of God, of your own soul. And this book is hermetic, people. If you haven't heard us talk about it before, it's hermetic. It's just giving you very detailed instructions of how that can play out. Like, talk about scenarios of life. Like, this book, I have it right, is this thick, and it's filled with just scenarios of all the different things that could come up when you're awakening, and it will help walk you through them. Even though it's from the 70s, it's actually exceptionally one of the most relevant information pieces we have now to just give you like the total effect of how you can play this out in every little variable that this is going to come about, because ultimately it's going to come down to your own truth and how that ends up looking and what you have to do to get there.
Absolutely. Very well put. Don, what do you think, man?
Oh, you guys are just on fire. I'm loving this episode. And something I've noticed in some of the situations that I've been observing, and it's kind of a side effect of the Smith effect, is, again, it's friends, family, whomever. People will walk away from you when you don't feed that energetic need anymore. Like, there are energetic relationships where people have been, and I hate the word feeding off of us, because some of it is completely innocent. These people don't realize that they're doing and performing certain tasks in your life, and it's not for your benefit, it's for their own ego. And when you start to not to need to be that person anymore because you've transitioned and you've moved on, and you don't provide that energetic stimulus to these people, you're going to start to appear useless, and they don't even know why they like you, and they don't know why they talk to you, and they don't even bother talking to you anymore because you don't feed them anymore. It's a type of dopamine. Like, Dyanna, I know you've deep dived dopamine hits. This is another one of those things where if you don't feed the addiction that some of the people that you've been closely in contact have come to depend on you for, you lose being the source. Like, you're no longer the hookup for that smash, and you become useless to them, and then you just become a disposable thing. You lose contact with them. And that's one of the things I've noticed that's going on as we're going through these massive upgrades and changes. And one of the things I can say from my personal experiences is soul grade changes make you feel like unfamiliar with yourself and your own situation at times. And it's uncomfortable, and even to the point of being emotionally painful, but it's necessary because it's that pupa stage. You're coming into a different stage of your existence. And, I bet you the caterpillar going through all the shit that they go through doesn't feel great all of the time. And this isn't going to feel great all the time. You got to think that poor fucker is actually just gel at some points, right? And you have to go through all of the stages of transition, and you might feel like you don't have your outer shell and you're completely new and completely exposed to this reality, but you have to go through it. It's part of this experience.
I completely agree. And you both are on fire yourselves today with all of this. So, but no, I'm going to kind of peg off that for a little bit as well. It is, when we step into these massive changes, and we break through into this new layer of ourselves, there's going to be the unfamiliarity. There is. We're approaching what I would call a brand new energetic foundation, a clean slate, right? And we have become used to having our plates full in a lot of ways. And sometimes when your plate is no longer full and it's actually a clean plate for you to begin to put stuff back onto it, that can be strange. That can feel weird, and ultimately the biggest thing I can leave with everybody on that when it comes to having this brand new slate, this new energetic foundation that you walk into when you change and you exchange the good for the great. All right. It's part of the process. You know, you're going to have points where, you know, your ego is going to come in and it's going to be like, well, if you had stayed back there, you wouldn't feel this way. Or, oh, you know, maybe if you just hung on to that one thing, you would have some kind of comfort point for this new, brand new slate. Guys, a brand new slate's a brand new slate. You create these new comfort points, and you create the new comfort points that are in alignment with the soul, Christ, and the divine. Okay. And you have this new slate for you to create. We're all a magician in that sense. All of us are. We all have the capability to be a magician, especially with a brand new energetic slate. And this is where you step into your power. This is where you ultimately find that this is a powerful thing. You know, at first you have that unsureness, and it's the ego equals resistance, guys. Anytime you are making a positive change for yourself and you feel any kind of resistance towards this positive change, that's the ego. That's it coming in, trying to be the safety mechanism. Oh, you don't really want this, like, or, you know, oh, you don't, or this, or, you know, oh, you know, you're not going to be as comfortable if you make this leap, or vice versa. But ultimately, this is where we talk about softening that ego in our spiritual practice and becoming in alignment so we can recognize that. You know, because even though, like, yes, we need the ego to exist here. Don't get me wrong. You know, as much as I say, like, yeah, if we didn't have the ego, if I didn't have my ego, I'd be laying on the floor behind here, just on my back, sprawled out, one with everything. And, like, don't get me wrong, that's great sometimes. We need that sometimes. The key word is sometimes, though. You know, we can't be that way all the time. So ultimately, because then we can't do what we're supposed to do here. And but that's why we soften the ego and we cultivate that foundation with Christ and the divine, so we can differentiate in those times where we're at in that struggle with ourselves. Because, you know, I struggle within myself for the things. I know Dyanna sure as hell struggles within herself, you know, when it comes to things too. I know for sure Don struggles with himself when it comes to certain things. But that's the point of cultivating yourself in a foundation of Christ and the divine, because then you become that personally sovereign, discerning human being. You know your inner workings, you know your insides, you understand yourself at a deeper level. And when you understand yourself out of a deeper level, on that deeper level like that, you know that that's the ego chiming in. You know that that's the trauma bond to that familiarity with comfort, you know, and you know that that's not going to help you trade the good for the great. So this is why, you know, we always hammer every time, you know, cultivating yourself spiritually, walking with Christ. Okay. You know, doing the meditations, doing A Course in Miracles. And you know, and I'll even say that A Course in Miracles is a foundation for this new age. And I've said it before. So that's kind of what we have to understand in these times, you know, even talking about what Dyanna said about the demiurgic egregores that can channel through people, especially in the Smith effect. You know, this is, guys, walking with Christ is looking in the face of fear and smiling and laughing. Okay. Looking in the face of negativity and giving it love. Okay. So even in those times when you're trading the good for the great, and you might be in a struggle with yourself over this, or the people around you might be damning every single action that you make, understand that you are taken care of. You are held in the arms of Christ and the divine always, as long as you continue to walk with that in your heart, in your divine spark. So, and even just kind of what Lee said too, out of the comfort zone can be scary. Like, dude, yes, it can. I you know, like, yes, I'm a huge rock and I handle things well, but even myself at times, like, you know, I have my moments where it's like, you know, I need to sit and I need to work through things. We all do. Okay. So ultimately that's it, guys. It's, you know, having the trust, it's having, I'll even say faith, knowing that you're going to be provided for. Do not let your ego get out of line and get the best of you. And I'm even going to pull a quote from Dyanna and Sam's show on A Course in Miracles. They did the other day too, where you can't let the ego be the driver in the driver's seat during this. You can't. You got to put it in the passenger seat where it belongs. And you got to understand that you are always looked out for. So Dyanna, what are your thoughts? Mike,
Are we still going to do a meditation?
Yeah, we can do a meditation.
Okay, then I can save most of my thoughts for that, because I completely agree with everything you just said. Everything. And I just have like words to solidify it.
I figured you would. And Don, what do you think, man, before we hop into our meditation? Let me grab my guitar. Hold on.
Absolutely. I'm just going to wrap it up with a couple of key things to remember is people don't like your success. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase Stephen and Lee here, because Stephen has even said that, you know, people always want to cheer for the bad and never like encourage the good. It's that mob mentality that the general populace has. So, you know, if you see people falling away from you, it's because you're going in the right direction. Like Lee said, people don't like your success because it makes them see their own inadequacies. And just finally, you know, missing the illusion is a trap. Leaving the familiar is the first step towards the vision that you're trying to create. Like, you have to step out of that comfort zone, and it sucks because you're like, hey, I remember how this was so easy when I didn't know shit. Well, now you do, and you have to go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I would just add one more thing, that alignment, comfort can mimic alignment. But if you have a stirring still and you're like, what is this? That's comfort. You're not in alignment.
I completely agree with the both of you. And I think you both are amazing and have done such a fantastic job with this. And yeah, no, guys, comfort can mimic alignment. There are signs that you can tell if comfort is mimicking alignment. I mean, one of the ones that I see, at least personally for myself, is when I'm in alignment, I see the synchronicities everywhere. And when I'm not in alignment and I'm in comfort, I don't. You know, one of the things I've always spoken about, even on my show, is symbolism is the prime language of this universe, of the divine. And at least I always feel that way. And the synchronicities are a form of symbolism that you are in alignment and you are working towards the right path. And when you feel like you're in alignment, but you're in comfort, you will notice that these synchronicities will start to cease and you will start to experience some kind of resistance. And that's a really good way of keeping yourself honest with yourself about this, because self-honesty is going to be imperative when you're trading the good for the great. You know, and of course, like, you know, we can always we have to find that happy medium, because sometimes, you know, we're our biggest cheerleaders to a fault, or we can be our biggest critics to a fault. And it's finding, yes, Lee, we can definitely jam for sure. But it's finding that balance between the two and being realistic with yourself and honest with yourself. That's going to help propel you further. So, and we know that Christ energy is a Heros Gamos, and we know that that speaks balance. So with that being said, let's head up to our meditation.
So everybody straighten the spine and deep breathe through the nose. Feel your auric field expand as you mind love. You are one with God. Are God. Everyone is. Everything is. The lines provide the line. The other. God provides, because you are that God. So when you are mind, body, spirit aligned, the universe manifests. There are no limits to what you can do if you see yourself clearly. Know that's true. Be true. Dive deep inside yourself and see yourself in your highest alignment, your highest bliss and joy. Sit in that space now and resonate.
All right. That was amazing. That was good. Very well done, Dyanna. Very well done. All righty, guys. Well, we are going to close out this Sunday's Church of True Christ Life Changes. And the one thing I want to say to everybody from the bottom of my heart, every single one of you out there deserves the great. Every single one. You deserve the great, Dyanna. You deserve the great, Dawn. And all of you are enough. All right. Every single one of you is enough. And, it took me a while to realize that for myself. It's a process. But I just want all of you to know that each and every one of you who's watching this, we all go through our struggles. We all have things that might haunt us. We all have things that we think about. Sometimes we worry. Sometimes we even have fear. But always know, when you live with love in your heart and you live in that frequency of love for yourself, for Christ, for the divine, that aligns you to the great. You deserve it. All right? Everybody deserves it. Don't ever see yourself as not deserving. Don't ever see yourself as less than. All right? And yeah, these changes, they can be intense sometimes. These changes they can even seem immense. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of things that could be, don't get me wrong, but when you live out of love, your internal world creates your external. And through that, if you are living in alignment and you are living with that love in your heart and in that frequency of love, you will always be looked out for. You deserve that great. And that's just what I want to leave everybody with here today. And any final thoughts from you two?
I think you nailed it, dude.
Yes, perfect.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another Church of True Christ Sunday sermon. We will probably be back next week again, and we will have something good to talk about as well. I really like we're getting down to the real stuff lately, because I know a lot of us out there experience this. And while everybody's chasing the rabbit holes or chasing all of this stuff, distracting them from what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
Right?
like just hashtag it's all of them and drop the conspiracies. It's all of them, the government, Hollywood, fucking everything. It's all of it. Just worry about you and making your life aligned.
Well, I'm even going to bring a quote from my good friend Emily Moyer. Yes, the conspiracies are true, but that's not the point.
Exactly.
The conspiracies are to show you that there is a spiritual nature to this reality. You have the power to be a
And then
creator.
this is a story. This is a fictional story, and you can write it.
Absolutely. We got the script. We're writing it together. So, all righty, guys. Thank you again for joining us. We will be back next week. And you guys have yourselves a wonderful Sunday. Go out there and enjoy. I know we're getting into winter. So put on your jacket, go outside for a little bit, and have yourselves a good weekend, everybody. Take care. Much love, and always walk with Christ. He's got your back.